Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I certainly would have preferred to have been there with you in person, but as Mr. Johns has stated, things are keeping us here in Washington, and we certainly are all aware of what those issues are swirling on the Hill. So we hope for a swift resolution for not only our state DOT, but our other federal partners, many of whom are on the webinar. So I'm really encouraged by the level of enthusiasm around this topic. Certainly that enthusiasm is driven by real-world priorities. So kudos to Bob and the team for kicking off this dialogue that will really include many facets and many organizations throughout the federal government, as well as our state, local, and NPO and NGO friends. So again, this is a conversation that will certainly resonate. One thing Bob didn't mention, though, is that prior to law school, I had been a network news personality. So this falls right in my wheelhouse. So again, welcome to the kickoff of this important series on transportation system resilience, extreme weather, and climate change. In June, President Obama rolled out a comprehensive climate change action plan. It calls for a series of executive actions to cut carbon pollution in America, prepare the United States for the impacts of climate change, and to lead international efforts to address global climate change. The plan recognizes that even as we take new steps to cut carbon pollution, we must prepare for the impacts of changing climate that are already being felt across our country. For example, 2012 was the second most extreme weather year on record for the nation. It was also the warmest year on record in the U.S. In fact, about 1/3 of the U.S. population experienced 100-degree temperatures for 10 or more days. Now, I don't know how many of us here grew up on the East Coast, but certainly, I did, having grown up in Long Island, and I can just tell you, it was a rare instance to have one 100-degree day during the summer. So, it doesn't take, it's not much of a leap of logic or faith to understand that things are happening in our climate, and they're probably the result of human activity. We've also witnessed that droughts, wildfires, and floods are more frequent and intense. Wildfires alone burned more than 9.3 million acres last year. Climate and weather disasters come at a huge cost. In 2012, they cost the U.S. economy more than $100 billion. One storm alone, Superstorm Sandy, is estimated to have cost more than $65 billion. So our work is cut out for us. We need to ensure that our states, cities, and towns build stronger communities and infrastructure and protect critical sectors of our economy. We must learn from Superstorm Sandy and pilot innovative strategies to protect against future extreme weather and climate impacts. Our global transportation infrastructure is confronted with a number of significant vulnerabilities, including the escalating threats of climate change. This special speaker series will explore transportation system resiliency in the context of climate changes facing the nations and indeed the global transportation system. But before I introduce the first speaker in our series, I'd like to quote President Obama, who said, "We, the people, still believe that our obligations as Americans are not just to ourselves, but to all posterity. We will respond to the threat of climate change, knowing that the failure to do so would betray our children and future generations." So it is my great pleasure to introduce Steve Winkleman, Director of Transportation and Adaptation Programs at the Center for Clean Air Policy. Steve has 20 years of experience in the transportation, energy, and environmental fields, assisting government officials around the world with policy design, implementation, and evaluation of low emissions development strategies. His research and writing focus on the intersections of infrastructure, transportation, and land use planning, climate policy, and economics. He facilitates stakeholder dialogues to diagnose problems and craft effective solutions. His important work in the area of climate adaptation is encouraging urban leaders and government entities to ask the climate question when making infrastructure and land use decisions to improve their resilience to climate change impacts. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Steve Winkelman as our initial speaker.